My name is Rachel Martinez, and I'm 31 years old. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would ignore her instincts, but love has a funny way of making you blind to the things that should be screaming at you in neon lights. For 3 years, I believed I had found my person. His name was Marcus, and he was the kind of man who could make you feel like you were the only person in the room, even when that room was crowded with 100 other people. He had this way of looking at you, really looking at you, that made everything else fade into background noise. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. I was the maid of honor, he was a groomsman, and somewhere between the ceremony and the reception, we ended up talking for 4 hours straight. He told me about his dreams of opening his own consulting firm. I told him about my work as a graphic designer and how I wanted to start my own agency someday. There was this electricity between us, this sense that we were both builders, both ambitious, both ready to create something beautiful together. 6 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, we were talking about marriage, kids, the whole future stretched out before us like a golden road. But lately, something had shifted. It started small, the way these things always do. Marcus had always been busy with work, but over the past few months, his schedule had become increasingly erratic. Late-night meetings that ran until midnight. Weekend conferences that popped up with barely any notice. Business trips that extended by days without explanation. I told myself it was just the pressure of trying to land new clients, that his consulting work demanded flexibility. I was supportive. I was understanding. I was everything a good partner should be. Then came the texts. Not from other women, nothing that obvious. But messages from unknown numbers at strange hours. Calls he would take in the other room, his voice dropping to a whisper. The way his phone was suddenly always face down on the table, password protected with a code he'd changed without telling me. When I asked about it casually one morning over coffee, he laughed it off. Just work stuff, babe. Client confidentiality. You know how it is. And I did know how it was. I ran my own freelance business. I understood professional boundaries. So I swallowed my unease and pushed it down deep where it couldn't bother me. Until last Tuesday. Marcus had left for work early, something about a breakfast meeting with a potential investor. I was working from home, deep in a logo redesign for a new client, when my laptop battery died. My charger had frayed weeks ago, and I kept forgetting to buy a new one. Marcus's laptop was sitting on the dining room table where he'd left it the night before. He'd told me a dozen times I could use it if I needed to. We shared everything, or so I thought. I opened it, expecting to see his desktop, maybe pull up Chrome and continue my work. But the screen that greeted me wasn't his usual workspace. It was his email, still logged in, the inbox open and glaring at me like an accusation I hadn't asked for. And there, sitting at the top of his messages, was an email thread that made my blood run cold. The email subject line read, Confirmation for Riverside Inn, Suite 12, March 8th through March 10th. My heart stuttered in my chest. March 8th was last weekend. The weekend Marcus had told me he was in Boston for a conference. The weekend he'd sent me a photo of himself in front of the convention center, smiling that easy smile I'd fallen in love with. The weekend he'd called me every night before bed to tell me he missed me and couldn't wait to get home. I clicked on the email with trembling fingers. Riverside and wasn't in Boston. It was 2 hours away, tucked in the mountains, the kind of romantic getaway spot couples went to for anniversaries and proposals. The kind of place you didn't book for a business conference. My mind raced through 1,000 explanations, each one more desperate than the last. Maybe it was a surprise for us. Maybe he was planning something special and hadn't wanted to ruin it. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation that I just wasn't seeing yet. But then I saw the second email, dated a week earlier. It was a confirmation from the same hotel for a different weekend in February. And then another from January. 3 separate bookings, all at the same intimate mountain resort, all during weekends when Marcus had supposedly been traveling for work. My hands felt numb as I scrolled further, digging deeper into his inbox like I was excavating my own grave. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, wine bars in neighboring cities, flower deliveries to addresses I didn't recognize. I sat there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, staring at the screen as my entire reality crumbled around me. Every late night, every last-minute trip, every password change suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't me being insecure or controlling. This was evidence, cold and undeniable, of a life Marcus had been living entirely separate from the one we shared. I heard his key in the lock around noon. He wasn't supposed to be home until evening. The sound of it turning made my stomach lurch. I closed the laptop carefully, deliberately, and stood up from the dining room table. My legs felt unsteady beneath me, but my mind was crystal clear in a way it hadn't been for months. All those times I'd dismissed my gut feeling, all those moments I'd told myself I was overthinking, came rushing back with perfect, painful clarity. Marcus walked in carrying takeout bags, his face brightening when he saw me. "Hey babe, meeting got cancelled so I figured I'd surprise you with lunch. Got your favorite from that Thai place you love." He moved toward me to kiss my cheek, but I stepped back. The smile on his face faltered. The bags in his hands suddenly seemed to hang heavier. "I need you to explain something to me," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, too calm, too measured. Marcus set the bags down on the counter, his expression shifting into something guarded. "Explain what?" I could see him calculating, trying to figure out what I knew, how much damage control he needed to do. I picked up his laptop and opened it, turning the screen toward him. The email inbox was still there, still open, still screaming the truth he'd been hiding. "Explain these. Explain the hotel bookings. Explain why you were at Riverside Inn for 3 weekends when you told me you were in Boston, in Chicago, in Philadelphia for work." The color drained from his face. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes that might have been genuine emotion. Fear, maybe. Or regret. But then his jaw tightened and his shoulders squared, and I watched in real time as he made the decision to go on the offensive instead of coming clean. "You went through my email?" His voice rose, sharp and accusatory. "You invaded my privacy, Rachel. That's a violation of trust. Do you understand that?" Instead of answering my question, instead of explaining the unexplainable, he was turning this around on me. Making me the villain for discovering what he'd been hiding. I felt something hot and furious rise in my chest. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice shaking now not with sadness but with rage. "Don't you dare make this about me going through your email when you've been lying to me for months. Where were you those weekends, Marcus? Who were you with?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times before, usually when he was frustrated with a difficult client or a project that wasn't going well. But this time it felt calculated, like he was buying time to construct his defense. "It's not what you think," he started, and I almost laughed at the cliché of it. "It's complicated, Rachel. There are things you don't understand about my work, about the pressure I'm under." "Then explain it to me," I demanded. "Make me understand why you needed to book romantic hotel suites in the mountains. Make me understand the flower deliveries and the wine bar charges and all of it, Marcus. Just tell me the truth." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing his options. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, deciding how much he could get away with, what version of the story would preserve the most of what he wanted to keep. And then he said the words that would replay in my mind for weeks afterward, the words that crystallized everything I needed to know about who he really was. He looked me dead in the eye, his expression cold and defiant, and said, "I don't have to tell you everything I do, Rachel. I'm a grown man. I have a right to privacy. You don't own me." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because of what they said, but because of what they revealed. This wasn't a man who was sorry. This wasn't someone who valued what we'd built together. This was someone who believed that his right to secrecy superseded my right to honesty. That his comfort was more important than my peace of mind. That I was asking for something unreasonable by expecting basic transparency from my partner of 3 years. I felt something inside me shift and settle, like a door closing on a room I'd never enter again. So that's it, I said quietly. That's your answer. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Just a declaration that you don't owe me the truth. Marcus's expression flickered with something, maybe surprised that I wasn't crying, wasn't begging, wasn't crumbling the way he might have expected. Rachel, come on. You're overreacting. Can we just talk about this like adults? Adults, I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Adults don't hide hotel bookings from their partners. Adults don't lie about business trips. Adults don't gaslight the person they claim to love when they get caught. I'm not gaslighting you, he snapped, his tone shifting from defensive to irritated. You're being paranoid. You've been stressed with work, and now you're seeing things that aren't there. Those hotels, they were for legitimate business purposes. I was meeting clients. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react exactly like this. The audacity of it took my breath away. He was standing in our apartment, caught red-handed with evidence of his deception, and he was still trying to convince me that I was the problem. That my completely rational response to discovering his lies was somehow proof of my instability. Get out, I said. The words came out steady and final. What? Marcus blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Get out of this apartment, I repeated. Pack a bag. Go stay wherever you've been spending your weekends. Go stay with whoever you've been buying flowers for. But you're not staying here tonight. His face twisted into something ugly then, all pretense of charm evaporating. You can't kick me out. I pay half the rent. My name is on the lease too. Then I'll leave, I said simply. Because I'm not spending another night under the same roof as someone who thinks I don't deserve basic honesty. I walked into our bedroom and pulled my old duffel bag from the closet. My hands were shaking as I started throwing clothes into it, not caring what I grabbed, just needing to move, to do something, to take action instead of standing there drowning in his excuses. Marcus followed me, his voice rising. Rachel, stop. Just stop and think for a second. Where are you going to go? Don't be dramatic about this. We can work it out. I'll explain everything, just give me a chance. But I was done giving chances. Done accepting half-truths and deflections. Done making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I zipped the bag closed and pushed past him into the bathroom, grabbing my toothbrush, my face wash, the essentials. He stood in the doorway watching me, and I could see the calculation happening again behind his eyes. He was trying to figure out if I was serious, if I would really walk away, and what it would cost him if I did. My phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it and scrolled to my best friend's name. Vanessa had been my rock since college, the kind of friend who would drop everything without asking questions. I typed quickly, "Can I stay with you tonight? I'll explain everything. Need to get out of here." Her response came within seconds, "Doors always open. Come now if you need to." I shouldered my bag and walked toward the front door. Marcus trailed behind me, his voice taking on a pleading quality now that he realized his tactics weren't working. "Baby, please. Don't do this. I love you. Whatever you think is happening, you're wrong. Just stay and let's talk this through properly." I turned to face him one last time, and I felt strangely calm. The panic and hurt had crystallized into something harder, clearer. You had your chance to talk, Marcus. You chose to tell me you don't owe me explanations. So now I'm choosing to leave before you can lie to me anymore. You'll regret this, he said, and there was an edge to his voice now, a hint of threat beneath the surface. You're throwing away 3 years over nothing. If this is nothing, I said quietly, then you shouldn't have any problem moving on. I walked out the door and didn't look back. Behind me, I heard him shout something, but I was already halfway down the hallway, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The afternoon sun was too bright when I stepped outside, almost mocking in its cheerfulness. I threw my bag in the back seat of my car and sat behind the wheel for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, "You're making a huge mistake. When you calm down and realize how irrational you're being, I might not take you back. I stared at the message, at the sheer entitlement dripping from every word, and something inside me snapped into perfect focus. I wasn't being irrational. I wasn't overreacting. I was doing exactly what I should have done the moment I felt that first flutter of unease months ago. I was trusting myself. I started the car and drove toward Vanessa's apartment, leaving behind the man I thought I knew and the life I thought we were building. The road ahead felt uncertain and terrifying, but at least it was honest. At least it was mine. Vanessa's apartment smelled like lavender and fresh coffee when I walked in. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug without saying a word. I stood there in her doorway, my duffel bag sliding off my shoulder onto the floor, and let myself feel it all for the first time. The betrayal. The humiliation. The crushing weight of realizing that the person you trusted most had been treating your relationship like an inconvenience he could sidestep whenever it suited him. We sat on her couch and I told her everything. The emails, the hotel bookings, the way Marcus had looked at me with such cold indifference when he said he didn't owe me explanations. Vanessa listened without interrupting, her jaw getting tighter with every detail. When I finished, she stood up and poured us both glasses of wine even though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. "He's going to come crawling back," she said, handing me a glass. "They always do. And when he does, you need to promise me you won't listen." I nodded, but part of me wondered if she was right. Part of me still couldn't quite believe this was real, that the man who'd talked about our future so confidently had been living a completely separate life behind my back. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Text after text from Marcus, each one a different flavor of manipulation. The first few were angry. "You're being childish. Running to your friend instead of handling this like a mature woman." Then they shifted to self-pity. "I can't believe you just abandoned me like this. After everything I've done for you." And finally, they turned accusatory. "I know you're probably telling Vanessa lies about me right now. Poisoning people against me because you can't accept that you invaded my privacy." I showed Vanessa the messages. She read them with disgust written all over her face. "He's following the playbook perfectly. Attack, guilt trip, play victim. Don't respond, Rachel. Don't give him anything to work with." But staying silent felt impossible. Every buzz of my phone was like a little hook trying to pull me back into his orbit. Around 7 that evening, Marcus called. I let it ring. He called again. And again. On the 4th attempt, Vanessa grabbed my phone and declined the call, then blocked his number entirely. "There," she said firmly. "Now he can sit with his choices." That night I barely slept. I kept replaying moments from our relationship, analyzing them through this new lens of deception. The time he'd insisted on doing all the travel booking for our anniversary trip, claiming he wanted to surprise me, when really he was probably just making sure I couldn't see his credit card statements. The way he'd started working out more, dressing better, buying new cologne, all things I'd been happy about at the time but now realized might have been for someone else. Every tender moment we'd shared now felt tainted, like I'd been living in a play where I was the only one who didn't know it wasn't real. The next morning, Vanessa had to leave for work early. She left me a note on the kitchen counter: "Stay as long as you need. Mi casa es su casa. Use today to figure out your next steps. You've got this." I appreciated her confidence even if I didn't share it. I spent the morning in a fog, drinking coffee and staring at my laptop screen, trying to work on client projects but unable to focus on anything except the wreckage of my personal life. Around 11, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was female, hesitant, younger than me. "Hi, is this Rachel Martinez?" My stomach dropped. "Yes, who is this?" There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "My name is Sienna. I think we need to talk about Marcus." The words hung in the air between us like a confession. I sat down slowly on Vanessa's couch, my heart hammering in my chest. "I'm listening," I managed to say. Sienna's story poured out in a rush. She was 26, worked in marketing, met Marcus at a networking event 8 months ago. He'd told her he was single, just focused on building his consulting business, looking for someone who understood ambition. They'd been seeing each other regularly, weekend trips to quiet places where they wouldn't run into anyone from his professional circles. He'd explained the secrecy by saying he didn't like mixing his personal life with his business network. She believed him because he was charming and attentive and made her feel special. Until yesterday, when she'd seen his social media relationship status. It still said in a relationship with Rachel Martinez. She'd confronted him about it through text, and he'd brushed it off, said we were basically roommates, that it was complicated, that he was planning to end things with me but hadn't found the right time. Sienna didn't buy it. She did some digging, found my design portfolio online, saw photos of Marcus and me together at events, looking very much like a real couple. So she decided to reach out. I felt numb listening to her. 8 months. He'd been with her for 8 months while coming home to me every night, while talking about our future, while letting me plan our lives together. I'm so sorry, Sienna was saying, her voice cracking. I had no idea. I would never have gotten involved if I'd known he was lying. I should have questioned things more, but he was just so convincing. It's not your fault, I heard myself say, even though part of me wanted to scream. He lied to both of us. You didn't know. But now we do. We talked for another 20 minutes. She told me about the hotel stays, the same ones I'd found in his email. Riverside and had been their place. He'd told her it was special, somewhere they could escape and just be together. He'd bought her flowers, taken her to nice dinners, played the role of devoted boyfriend while simultaneously playing it with me back home. The duplicity was staggering. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. This wasn't just secrecy or privacy or whatever justification Marcus wanted to hide behind. This was a double life, methodically constructed and carefully maintained. He'd been balancing 2 relationships, 2 versions of himself, 2 sets of promises and futures. And he'd done it so smoothly that neither of us had suspected the full truth until it all came crashing down. My phone buzzed. A text from an unsaved number, but I recognized the area code as Marcus's. He'd gotten around Vanessa's block somehow, probably texting from a work phone or a friend's. Rachel, we need to talk. You're taking this way too far. I made some mistakes, but you're acting like I committed a crime. Come home and let's work this out like adults. The audacity of it made my hands shake. I typed back quickly before I could second-guess myself. I know about Sienna. I know you've been with her for 8 months. I know about all the lies, not just the hotel bookings. Don't contact me again. His response came within seconds. Who the hell is Sienna? You're making things up now. This is insane. You're losing it, Rachel. Even caught, even confronted with a name, he was still denying. Still trying to make me question my own reality. I blocked the new number and turned my phone face down on the couch. Vanessa had been right. He was following a script, and every move was designed to destabilize me, to make me doubt what I knew to be true. That afternoon, I made myself get up and take action. I couldn't just sit in Vanessa's apartment spiraling. I called my landlord and explained that I needed to be removed from the lease, that the relationship had ended and I couldn't continue living there. He was surprisingly understanding, said he'd work with me on breaking it early with minimal penalties. Then I called my bank and opened a new checking account, transferring my portion of our shared funds and making sure Marcus no longer had access to anything with my name on it. Each practical step felt like taking back a piece of myself. I wasn't just leaving Marcus. I was methodically untangling every thread that bound us together, making sure there were no loose ends he could use to pull me back in. Vanessa came home that evening with takeout and a determined expression. Okay, she said, spreading containers across her coffee table. Tonight we're going to talk strategy. Because Marcus isn't going to take this lying down, and you need to be prepared for whatever comes next. She was right, of course. Men like Marcus didn't accept rejection gracefully. They viewed it as a challenge to their control, a problem to be solved or a reputation to be salvaged. And I could already feel him shifting tactics, testing different approaches to see which one would crack my resolve. "What do you think he'll do?" I asked, picking at the pad thai she'd ordered. Vanessa considered this carefully. "He'll try to control the narrative. Make himself look like the victim. Probably blast you on social media or to mutual friends. Maybe even try to turn your professional contacts against you. These types always have to win, even if they have to burn everything down to do it." Her words sent a chill through me, but they also sparked something else. Anger. Real, burning anger at the fact that I was sitting here strategizing how to protect myself from someone who was supposed to love me. Someone who I'd built a life with, who I'd supported and trusted and believed in. "Then let him try," I said quietly. "Because I'm done protecting his image. I'm done making myself smaller so he can feel bigger. Whatever he does, I'll deal with it. But I'm not going back." Vanessa smiled, fierce and proud. "That's my girl." My phone buzzed again later that night. This time it was a notification from Instagram. Marcus had posted a photo of himself looking contemplative, staring out a window with dramatic lighting. The caption read, "Sometimes the people you love most will betray your trust. Healing is a journey, but I'm committed to it. Grateful for real friends who see the truth." The comments were already filling up with supportive messages from people who had no idea what had actually happened. "Stay strong, man. You deserve better. Real ones know your worth." I felt sick reading them, seeing how easily he'd flipped the script, positioning himself as the wounded party while I was cast as the villain in a story only he was telling. I showed Vanessa. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. Classic. He's already working on his public relations campaign. The question is, do you respond or let him spin his lies? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to screenshot those hotel confirmations and blast them all over social media, wanted to expose exactly who Marcus really was. But another part of me, the part that was exhausted and hurt and just wanted peace, knew that engaging would only drag this out. It would give him what he wanted, my attention, my energy, my emotional labor. I'm not responding, I decided. Let him tell whatever story he wants. The people who matter will know the truth. And the ones who don't, I don't need in my life anyway. But even as I said it, I knew this was far from over. Marcus was building momentum, crafting his narrative, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. Because men who lie that smoothly don't give up easily. And the next move was definitely coming. Marcus's next move came 3 days later, and it was exactly as calculated as I'd feared. I was working at a coffee shop near Vanessa's apartment, trying to focus on a branding project for a new client, when my phone started lighting up with notifications. Not from Marcus this time, but from mutual friends, colleagues, even a few former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. The messages all carried the same confused, concerned tone. "Hey, is everything okay? Saw Marcus's post and wanted to check on you." I opened Instagram with a sense of dread pooling in my stomach. Marcus had posted again, but this time it wasn't vague and philosophical. It was a long, detailed caption accompanied by a photo of us from last year's vacation to the coast. We looked happy in the picture, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling at the camera with the ocean behind us. The image of a perfect couple. The caption told a very different story. It's with a heavy heart that I share this, but I believe in transparency and honesty, even when it's painful. Rachel and I have separated. I want to be clear that this wasn't my choice. I've spent the last few days trying to understand how we got here, trying to reach out and communicate, but she's completely shut me out. I made the mistake of maintaining friendships she didn't approve of not sharing every detail of my schedule with her, and apparently that was unforgivable. I respect her need for space, but I also need to speak my truth. Control and possessiveness aren't love. I hope she finds the peace she's looking for, and I hope she can eventually see that healthy relationships require trust and independence. To everyone who's reached out with support, thank you. I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I read it 3 times, each pass making my blood pressure rise higher. The way he'd twisted everything, made my discovery of his lies into my inability to trust. Made his double life sound like casual friendships I'd been too insecure to accept. Made himself the victim of my supposed control when the reality was that I'd supported his independence for 3 years while he built an entire secret relationship behind my back. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. Around me, the coffee shop buzzed with normal afternoon activity, people typing on laptops and chatting over lattes, completely unaware that my entire reputation was being shredded in real time across social media. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the hotel confirmations, Sienna's number, every piece of evidence that proved Marcus was lying. But I forced myself to breathe, to think strategically instead of reactively. Vanessa called within minutes of the post going live. "Do not respond yet," she said before I could even speak. "I know you're furious. I know you want to defend yourself. But anything you say right now will come from anger, and he'll use that against you. We need to be smart about this." She was right, but staying silent while Marcus painted me as an unstable, controlling girlfriend felt like swallowing glass. The comments on his post were multiplying by the minute. Friends offering sympathy, strangers sharing their own stories of toxic relationships, everyone rallying around Marcus while I sat in a coffee shop watching my character get assassinated in real time. Then my work phone rang. It was a number I recognized, a client I'd been courting for months, a big account that could really elevate my freelance business. My stomach sank even before I answered. "Rachel, hi, this is David Chen from Momentum Marketing. I wanted to touch base with you about the proposal you sent over." I straightened in my chair, trying to sound professional despite the chaos swirling around me. "Of course, David. Have you had a chance to review everything?" There was a pause, the kind that telegraphed bad news. "We have, and honestly, your work is impressive. But I have to be candid with you. Some concerns have been raised about your stability. Someone reached out to our team with some information about your personal situation, and while we try not to let personal matters influence business decisions, we do need to consider the reliability of our contractors." My mouth went dry. "Someone reached out to you. Who?" Another pause. "I'm not at liberty to say, but they were quite detailed about some recent behavior that raised red flags. Look, I'm sure there are two sides to every story, but we've decided to go in a different direction for now. Maybe down the line when things settle." He hung up before I could defend myself, before I could explain that whatever he'd been told was a lie, before I could salvage anything. I sat there staring at my phone, the full weight of what Marcus was doing crashing over me. He wasn't just trying to control the personal narrative. He was actively sabotaging my professional life. I called Vanessa immediately. He contacted my client. "He's going after my business now." Her sharp intake of breath told me she understood the severity. "That's actionable, Rachel. That's harassment. You need to document everything." I spent the rest of that afternoon screenshotting every post, every message, every interaction I could find. I created a folder on my laptop with evidence, timestamps, proof that Marcus's version of events was fabricated. But even as I built my case, I felt the walls closing in. How many other clients had he contacted? How many professional relationships had he poisoned with his lies? That evening, Sienna called me. Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "He found out I talked to you. He's been blowing up my phone, threatening to tell my boss that I'm unstable, that I'm stalking him. Rachel, I'm scared. What if he actually does it? I can't lose my job over this." I closed my eyes, guilt and anger warring inside me. "I'm so sorry, Sienna. This is escalating beyond what I expected. Have you documented his threats?" She had. We compared notes, built a clearer picture of Marcus's pattern. When confronted with the truth, he didn't retreat or apologize. He attacked. He weaponized whatever power he had to intimidate, to silence, to punish anyone who dared to expose him. 2 days later, the meeting request came through email. It was from Marcus's account, formal and cold. "Rachel, it's clear we need to discuss the practical matters of separating our lives. I propose we meet this Saturday at Cornerstone Cafe at 2 p.m. to divide remaining belongings and discuss financial obligations. I hope we can handle this maturely. Please confirm. I showed the email to Vanessa. She read it with narrowed eyes. It's a trap. He wants you in public where you'll feel pressured to stay calm while he manipulates you. If you're going, I'm coming with you. I wasn't sure I wanted to go at all. Every interaction with Marcus felt like stepping into quicksand. But there were practical matters, belongings I needed, accounts that needed closing. And part of me, a stubborn part that refused to be intimidated, wanted to face him one more time. Wanted to look him in the eye and let him know that his tactics weren't working, that I saw exactly what he was doing. I replied to the email with one word, confirmed. Saturday arrived with unseasonably cold weather, gray skies that matched my mood. Vanessa insisted on driving, her presence a steady reminder that I wasn't alone in this. We arrived at Cornerstone Cafe 15 minutes early to claim a table near the back, somewhere with a clear view of the entrance but away from the main crowd. Marcus walked in exactly at 2, carrying a cardboard box. He dressed carefully, button-down shirt and slacks, the image of a reasonable man trying to handle a difficult situation with grace. His eyes swept the cafe until they landed on our table, and I saw his jaw tighten when he noticed Vanessa sitting beside me. He approached slowly, setting the box on an empty chair. I brought some of your things, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Books, that jewelry box you kept in the bathroom, some mail that's been coming to the apartment. Thank you, I replied, matching his formality. I have a list of other items I need to collect when it's convenient. Marcus sat down, and I could see him assessing the situation, trying to figure out how to proceed with Vanessa there as a witness. He'd probably planned some private conversation where he could charm or intimidate me without anyone else hearing. Her presence had already disrupted his script. Look, he started, leaning forward with what I'm sure he thought was a sincere expression. I know things ended badly between us. I know you're angry. But we're both adults, and we both need to move on with dignity. The social media posts, the messages, all of that, it's just making everything worse. I felt Vanessa tense beside me, but I stayed calm. You posted first, Marcus. You created a false narrative about what happened between us. You contacted my clients to sabotage my business. Don't talk to me about dignity when you've spent the last week trying to destroy my reputation. His mask slipped for just a second, a flash of irritation crossing his face before he smoothed it away. I don't know what you're talking about. I reached out to people we both know to get support during a difficult time. If that affected your business, maybe you should consider how your own behavior is being perceived. There it was. The gaslighting, the deflection, the attempt to make me doubt my own reality even when I had evidence. I pulled out my phone and opened to a screenshot. This is an email from David Chen at Momentum Marketing. He told me someone contacted them with concerns about my stability. That was you, Marcus. Don't lie to my face. Marcus glanced at the phone, and I saw him recalculating. Vanessa spoke up then, her voice cold and hard. You're not just a liar, you're a saboteur. And everything you're doing right now is being documented. So I'd suggest you think very carefully about your next move. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over, sensing the conflict brewing. Marcus's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack, and I could see the anger simmering beneath his surface. This wasn't going the way he'd planned, and men like Marcus didn't handle losing control very well. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You know what? I tried to be civil. I tried to give you a chance to end this with some dignity. But clearly you're more interested in playing the victim with your little friend here backing you up. Keep the stuff in the box. I don't want anything from you. And you can tell Sienna or whoever else you've been turning against me that this is all going to come back on you. The mention of Sienna's name confirmed what I'd suspected. He knew we'd talked. And he was threatened by it, by the fact that his lies were being exposed from multiple angles. Are you threatening me? I asked quietly, and I made sure my voice carried to the tables around us. Marcus realized his mistake too late. Several people were openly watching now, witnessing his outburst. He forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just stating facts. Actions have consequences, Rachel. You'll learn that soon enough. He turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving the box of my belongings behind like a discarded prop. The door swung shut behind him with a sharp chime. I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding, while Vanessa reached over and squeezed my hand. You did great, she said softly. You didn't take the bait. And now everyone in here saw him lose his temper while you stayed calm. She was right. But as I looked at the box of my things, at these small pieces of my life that Marcus had weaponized into another manipulation, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't over. The mask had slipped, and what I'd seen underneath was so much uglier than I'd imagined. Marcus wasn't going to let this go. And I had no idea what his next move would be, only that it was coming. 3 weeks after the cafe confrontation, something shifted. Marcus's social media posts became less frequent, his attempts to contact me dwindled to nothing. I learned through mutual friends that Sienna had filed a formal complaint against him for harassment at her workplace, and the documentation we'd both gathered had made it impossible for him to deny his pattern of behavior. His carefully constructed image was crumbling, and the people who'd initially supported him were starting to see through the cracks. I signed a lease on a small loft downtown, a space with exposed brick and huge windows that let in streams of morning light. It was smaller than what Marcus and I had shared, but it was entirely mine. No shared memories haunting the corners, no ghosts of broken promises lingering in the rooms. I painted the walls myself, chose furniture that reflected my taste alone, built a workspace where I could focus on rebuilding my client base. The professional damage Marcus had done was real, but it wasn't fatal. I reached out to David Chen one last time, not to beg for the contract, but to provide documented evidence of Marcus's interference. I explained calmly and professionally what had actually happened, offered references from other satisfied clients, and left the decision in his hands. 2 weeks later, he called back. The contract was mine if I still wanted it. Vanessa helped me move into the new place, and on the first night, we sat on my floor surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and ordered pizza. She raised her beer bottle in a toast. To new beginnings and to never settling for less than you deserve. I clinked my bottle against hers, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness yet, that would take time, but a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. That walking away from Marcus wasn't weakness or overreaction. It was the strongest thing I'd ever done. I never saw Marcus again after that day in the cafe. He moved out of our old apartment, and I heard through the grapevine that he'd relocated to another city for a fresh start. Part of me wondered if he'd learned anything, if he'd take responsibility for the hurt he'd caused. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all anymore. Sitting by my loft window one evening, watching the city lights flicker to life, I thought about the woman I'd been when I first discovered those emails. How scared I'd felt, how uncertain. And I thought about who I'd become through the fire of it all. Someone who trusted her instincts. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who understood that love without respect isn't love at all. I whispered to my reflection in the glass, a promise to myself. I don't need someone who thinks honesty is optional. I need someone who knows it's everything. And with that truth settled deep in my bones, I turned away from the window and toward the life I was building, one honest, intentional choice at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.